Sefer Gayon by Reb Chaim Lutzato. The Ramchal has done a quite remarkable job out of organizing the thinking process, and our job is to try to express that as clearly as possible. So we've done a lot of work making these charts and trying to organize the book in such a way that it's presentable. However, we're going to have to also do application. But the first thing is, as we learned in the other Sefer, Dr. Gemara, we have to do a roa. We have to see the general picture, and then we have to go back over it. So in our Visio chart in front of you, I hope everyone can see that, we have the basic overview of what this chapter is about. Remember, the book, as always, we start with the beginning concepts of musagim. That's how the Ramchal explained what are the classification of thoughts, and then what are the various terms used in logic, the 21 logical terms. And now is the finale of the Sefer, where he's going to put everything together and show us his system of both analysis and of creating statements and chiburim and compositions. And also we mentioned that if we understand his system, since he's very faithful to his system, whenever you read any of the Ramchal books like Mesil Shasharim or Derech Hashem, or we'll see the same type of structure, which is the way that he created the Sefer. So we just have to look into those books and identify how he did it. This method is divided into two broad categories. Something he calls the Seder Klali, which is a way that one would organize his learning. After you've learned information, you want to teach it, or if you'd like to even study information, how should you go about it? So that's what he calls Sefer Klali, and it's the organization of information. He always says, if you're presenting, you should always go from those things which are prior to those things which are miyuchar afterwards, such as the klal. You always talk about the klalim first and then the pratim. You go from those things which are more known to the things which are less known. And then he gave a little exposition, the difference between teaching or learning scientific material, which really is knowledge, as opposed to teaching someone an action. In the second half of this chapter, he's going to describe how to create statements and how to bring proofs to those statements, and then he's going to show us at the end how to analyze statements and how to analyze compositions. So that's the four little boxes here. He has what's called a creative hamsa'ah. If you want to now understand ideas, and you want to check out whether the ideas that you're understanding are complete. So you're going to have a system, he says, of creating statements, and also a system whereby you can also create hikashim. Now, we're going to go into Kanaf after we discuss this chapter, and he'll give us a very, very clear exposition of this system. So although it's a little bit abstract at this point, we'll be getting hands-on experience, B'ezrat Hashem. The second part is called Havchana, is analysis. That means you have a statement, and you want to now analyze whether the statement is true or false. So that's what he calls Havchanat HaGezeros, analyzing statements, or Havchanat HaMemarim, which is going to be at the end, where you want to analyze someone's composition, his drush. You want to break it down, make sure that it's logical, and it has support for each part of its process. Again, when we're learning Gemara, it's going to be an invaluable tool, since the Gemara is involved in vikuach, in analysis of statements, whether it be of the Chumash or whether it be of the Mishnah or Amoraim. These tools are very, very important to understand how to debate an issue. So he says there's two types, as he mentioned also in Tfunos. There's a person who acts as if he's a group. In other words, he presents a proposition, he brings proof, then he asks difficulties on it and resolves difficulties. As the Gemara says, he asked a question and he answered it. And then the most common type of debate in the Gemara is a debate between individuals. Many people participating, 2, 3, 4, or the Gemara itself participating. That's what he calls medameh. Medameh is, excuse me, medameh, oops, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. B'fnei atzmo is when you bring a proof directly to something, and vikuach is when you do it through debate. And in debate you have medameh, which is what I said before, I'm sorry, which is where one person takes all the sides of the debate, or where you have actually people debating. Okay, then he broke that down into 4 basic categories. He told us that we can analyze a debate in 4 different ways, through its nosei, ofen, its midvatchim, and its tachlis, which was that we have to, he gave us rules, what is the proper subject to debate, things like whose truth can be true, found, for instance. Then he said, what's the proper often the way that one should participate in a debate. And then we spoke about the various people who participate in the debate and what they should do on each side. The maniach, the meishiv, and the maksha. Excuse me, the maniach, the maksha, and the meishiv. They all have different rules. The maniach is going to present the information, the maksha is going to attack him, and then either that same person, another person, will now be a meishiv and will remove the attack. Okay, and then we spoke about the goals of a debate, and the principal one is to find the truth, but there are minor goals like sharpening your mind. So that's basically where we left off. Now we have to go to this little piece, which is an analysis of someone's drushes, his composition. So let's get to that, and then we'll have to. Oops, the wrong save file. We'll get there eventually. There we go. Okay, so we're in the very last section, and he's going. And again, this is about hamsa, but this is a hamsa of a composition. Let's see what he says here. Ad heina ba'arnu hamsa. Excuse me. Up to this point, we did hamsa, which is how to create either statements or compositions. Now we'll talk about analysis, breaking down what has been said. Vehi havchein chelkei hamamarim. It's to discern the parts of a statement. V'hamidam al madrigei sem hahigyonim, and to set them up in their logical import, and he'll explain that. Perisho kihine acha shiadanu ma nishlo ones chayev be'echad min hanosim. After you understand the first part, which is the subject, predicate, and what is being affirmed or denied, and you also understand hahekeshim hamuchachim amitam gezeres min gezeres, then you understand the proofs. Remember, this book is all about statements and proofs. So you've defined the statements. You've also defined the proofs. He says, "Mizeh nivne hadrushim v'hagados v'malitza k'ru'ui." Once the logical foundation is established, then the other forms of malitza will be added to the text. So what you have to first do when you're creating a text or when you're analyzing a text is first understand what is the statement that you want to conclude and how you're going to do that, what are your proofs. Then we're going to add all forms of malitza to make that easier to understand by the side of the person who is handling it. Now, Be'ezrat Hashem, after we finish Higayon, we have to do his Sefer on Malitza, which is how to make words or how to make ideas penetrate someone's heart through clarity and through the use of a lot of tools which will misara a person to see the value of what you're saying. But right now he's interested in the Higayon part, which is the stripping away of that Malitza, which is all the rhetorical parts of the statement, and getting down to the bare bones message. So that's what he says here. כי הנה אחרי שידענו מה נשלול או נחייב באחד מן הנושאים וההיקשים המוכחים אמיתם גזרס מן הגזרס, מזה נבנה הדרושים והגדוס במליצה כראוי. Once you understand the statements and the hekeshim, which are the foundation of all these explanations and Haggadot, Sipurim, I don't know if Sipur is a bad word, but I don't say Haggadot, stories which are built or added to that is built all these Malitza aspects, all these methods in order to make the language communicate in a more effective way. Then also what's happened is when you have the bare bones understructure, then you spell out more parts. You're marchiv the lashon, so it becomes clearer. V'shar devarim halatzei asurim lahamtik, and all the other methods which the people who understand Malitza, the art of rhetoric, will teach you in order to sweeten what you have to say. Okay, so you have to understand there's two parts of communication. There's the bare bones idea, which is being communicated, and then there's the dressing, which is helping the listener appreciate what you're saying. Then that listening is either through rhetorical methods of increasing his emotional receptivity, or just by spelling things out in more words than you may necessarily need in order so the speaker can hear it. Okay. Ach lahavchinat hadrushim, but when you're analyzing, that's when you've created a composition. That's what you've done. You've taken your logic and added rhetoric to it. But when you're trying to analyze a composition, nitzarech linatcham. There you have to do a little bit of surgery there. Ulahavdil inyanei hamalitza v'daki hasipur levad, and you have to separate all those rhetorical methods and ways of expanding, in other words, speaking at length in order to get an idea across, or metaphors. All those things have to be separated from all the logical parts. Okay. So, and you have to mifshatim, you have to, like I said, bare bones, you have to skin it. V'arumim, laid it out naked, mikol shar in yinei asipur. You have to lay out the logical structure and separate it from all type of rhetorical devices. And also, v'hakeshim al-tzir tzurasam v'sidaram. Then you have to not only have the statement, but you have to have all the proofs from all those hekeshim that led to the final result. Va'az, after you've done that, you're nocha lishpot osam ulavchin osam. After you've done that operation of stripping away to the bare bones logic of the composition, then you're able to judge whether what's being said is sense or nonsense, truth or false. Okay, so that's a very important rule. A lot of times in just human interaction, the same thing happens. There's a layer of emotion, and then there's a layer of information. Sometimes that layer of emotion is clogging or fogging the information that has to be passed. So we have to separate the information from all that emotional baggage, which was very necessary, by the way. You know, we're going to learn in Melitza. Melitza is not just a way to sort of slyly get someone to believe what you have to say. It's also a necessity to have people hear the truth, because we can all hear the truth, but if we don't have Mishlei and the tefillos of David HaMelech said in such a beautiful way, it doesn't move our hearts to go after those things which we know to be true. So Melitza is a very important part of communication, and Bezat Hashem, I'm going to get into that when we study that next sefer of the Ramchal. V'hine, asiyas hanituach hazeh hi havchanat hazos shezacharnu. So this type of analysis of anyone's composition is exactly how I described, which is stripping away all the rhetoric and getting to the statement intended and all the proofs. Omnam, Seder Maisa Havchana Hazos Huzeh. Now I'm going to tell you about what's the proper order of analysis. Okay, you have someone's drush in front of you. You've heard someone's nice little word of Torah. Yeshakoyach. No, but now what you want to do is you want to analyze. So the Ramchal is now going to present us with what he says the proper seder of analysis. So he says like this: step number one, Techios hakol tzarech shetikra v'tishaneh v'tishalesh hadrush o hagada asher tirtze linateach. This is a surprise. He says the first thing that you have to do is to read and read again and to read a third time the composition or the tale, the story that is being that you want to analyze. Okay, that's an important thing, because we have to, as we learned in Darkei Gemara, the most important thing when you're dealing with people who are wise is called diktuk haloshen. And since they're saying chidushim, the mind is not sensitive to the chiddush right away. It needs to settle into it. So by reading things quickly in a B'kiyus way, you may just be reflecting your own ideas and not really understanding what the author has to say. So what you have to do is go over the text. And he says 3 times. The Darkei Gemara said when it comes to Gemara, it says Ein doma meya v'meya v'chad. There's no comparison between 100 and 101 times. So the Yam HaTalmud is very, very deep, very subtle, and that requires a lot of chazara. But not just chazara, repeating it like Tehillim, of course. Chazara, which means paying attention more and more to the exact message that's being said. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that you read the presentation 2 or 3 times. The second thing, v'tisponen bo heitev ad shetakir inyano. And then you have to think. We must to think. Thinking is an important part of life. Many people forgot to do it. They just think that they can turn on their MP3 and life is just a recording, but it's not. It's an active, life is something which requires active participation. So that's the second thing that we have to do. We have to hisbonen. Okay? So let's see what he says, how to do hisbonenos. Hisbonen heitev ad shetakir inyana. Imhu echad hayoter. Imhu peshut o murkav. In this drush, this composition that we're analyzing, there's 1, 2, 3. How many points are there? Spell them out. That's why what I do with the visual logic is really what the Ramchal did to create the Sefer. So, but in a sense, what it does is it enables us to focus on how many parts are there in the composition and what the relationship of those parts. So the first thing is you have to know how many parts are being presented in this composition, and you have to know im hu pashut omer kav, and you have to separate the simple from the complex. Remember, he told us that the general rule is to go from the simple to the complex, so you have to make sure that you have the fundaments, and if he's already on a complex level, you're going to have to go backwards to get and do reverse engineering to get to the basic principles. Because if you don't understand that, well, how many parts there and whether they're simple or compound, so then you're not going to understand what's being said clearly. And what will happen? And all of a sudden you'll find yourself drifting away from what's being said and just imagining what's being said, not really hearing what's being said. So that's the first thing. And the second thing. Okay, first thing, you have to read it a few times, and then you have to analyze its parts and then just discern which are the simple and the complex elements. And now that you've analyzed how many parts there are in this composition, אז תבדיל הבחנות או מופתים הנכללים בהן. Then you have to mavdil the havchanot, and this is one of the most important parts of his book. As we said, when it came to those 21 terms, those are the different aspects that one talks about when he communicates, whether it's a siba, masuba, chalakim. So you have to say, well, what is this composition talking about? Is it talking about time, place, position? Is it talking about the parts of an object? And that's what you have to do. So tavdil havchanos o moftim haneklan behem, not only the havchanot but also the proofs. Okay, so you have to decide what is being spoken about, what aspect is being spoken about, and what are the proofs that are being brought to it. Okay. Base v'tavdil ben hayote ikariim le'inyan uven habilti ikarim kol kach. Interesting rule here. He says you'll have to separate between the more essential and non-essential elements of the drush. Now, what does that mean? Shouldn't all the elements be essential? Well, you have a basic kasha, then you can have a kasha and a kasha and a kasha and a kasha, but that side tangent may be only a minor aspect in the basic flow of the argument. So you have to understand what is the basic elements, and then if we have little kashas and truths on the side, we're going to have to put them in their right outline level. Okay. Now, the inyane rabim, if you're talking about a drush that has many parts, so then you have to tafrid called inyan la'atzmo im b'bechinasav u'mofsav. Then you have to do analysis and separate each little part, each section, section A, section B, section C, and each section you have to go through the analysis of what's being said, what aspect is being said, and what are the proofs. Shelo le'arev inyan be'inyan v'lo tanai inyan b'tanai zulaso. And you do this so that you don't mix up the different subjects being spoken about and the different conditions that exist within each subject. The next thing to do, ta'amid hamoftim le'machlosehem al sidram v'tzurasam. Then you have to go down to the full construction of all the syllogisms that led to that conclusion. V'tavchin hamoftim ha'mamitim ha'inyan v'hamusofim bir u'marchivim ha'inyan ha'ikari. V'nimsa kol ha'chalakim mutzagim lefanecha. So he says like this, and another important thing, there's two types of elements that are in a composition. One is the raw proofs, what you need to prove your point, but then there's something called Tosefet Bir. We're going to learn about that a little later on, Bezrat Hashem, in Darkei Gemara, when the Gemara says Kugon. Tosefet Bir means that the person said what he had to say, but in order to clarify it, like he says derech mashal, for instance, that's called a Tosefet Bir. So you have to separate the main principles from the examples, umarchiva inyan, or anything that's used, like when he says perisho, okay. and you have to separate those out, okay? Because those are really not presenting. I mean, they are part of they're necessary in the total Jewish, but they're not presenting the conclusion and all the syllogisms that brought you to that conclusion. Now, once you do that, now when you do that, you'll find all the pieces are clearly placed in front of you. And you'll be able to recognize the truth of what's being said with the help of Hashem. So that is his exposition of how to analyze compositions. Now, if you notice, he's very true to his system, and that's why we can outline the Sefer so easily, because it's written in a very, very structured form. Not only can we do this with the Ramchal, but we can do it with the Gemara and the Mishnah, the Chumash itself, because since behind it is wisdom, whether it's wisdom of Hashem, wisdom of Chachamim, it's written in a highly structural way. And this is a tremendous chiddush that some people are not aware of. But once you are aware of it and you can apply these rules that we're learning in the Ramchal, then you can clearly say, okay, what is it that you're trying to say? What is your conclusion, and how is it that you got there? And if you're learning Gemara, the same thing. What is the aim? What are we trying to get to? And what are the proofs for it, and what are the proofs against it? And why do the people who support one side disagree with the people who support the other side, and vice versa? Now, when we were in the library looking for the part of Sefer Derek Tfunos that was missing there in Rayas, we looked at the other Svarim of the Ramchal, and it turns out that although present-day Svarim of the Ramchal end here, in the manuscript he has a whole chapter called Kanaf Heshim. Okay, and that was an extremely important part of the original Sefer, and the proof that I will give to it is not only because it's an application of what we're just doing here, because a lot of these concepts are foreign to our ears, but at the end of this little chapter, the little book, he does say Tam v'Nishlam, which is usually how they always end the Svarim. So here we have in this,
manuscript was
yes, in the Ramchal's, yes, in his own handwriting. Wow. I believe, unless it was one of his, but I think it was the Ramchal's own handwriting. So this is a very, very important find. First of all, it's an integral section in Sefer Gaon, but what's almost more important now, the Ramchal is going to now go through the 21 different terms, and he's going to show us how to build and analyze statements and compositions. That's what he's going to do. Okay. Now again, what I did, and it took me quite an amount of time, is that it's built in an outline, and if the Ramchal's had these tools, no doubt about it, he would use them, and I'm sure when he wrote the Sefer, that's exactly how he wrote it, with his own pen. But when we're reading these Svarim, we don't see the logical structure behind them, and it becomes like just saying Tehillim. So we have to analyze this little section as carefully as we can, and then what I would like to do is go back over the section and read it again, and then the next project that we have is Malitza, and then what we have to do is go in to learn Gemara together, and we have to use this method and apply what we can to actually break down the sugya and organize it according to the Ramchal Shita. If we can do that, it'd be fantastic. I'm sure the Ramchal, I went to his kever, I asked him for some Siyata Dishmaya, and Bezat Hashem will help us. Okay. So he says like this.
So this was in the back of Sefer, Sefer Gaon, okay.
Yeah, it was the next page. It was the next page of Sefer Gaon. It was just not printed. I have no idea why, but it wasn't. I'm sorry, this was my outline of what he did. I'm going to go down to the next thing. Here it is. So this is called Kanaf Beseda Hashemos Hamishtamshim Lehigayon. This is the appendix, I think it would be called in English. The appendix about syllogisms, using all these words that we use in Higayon, the 21 terms. So let's jump into it. Hamamarim. There's two types of statements, he says. There's going to be the Peshutim and the Murkavim. What's the difference between a Mamar Peshut and a Mamar Murkav? Well, the Ramchal defines all his terms. Hamamarim HaPeshutim Hem HaMekaimim O Sholim Nasu B'Nosei Bli Raya. A statement which is Peshut is one that affirms, denies a certain predicate in a subject without a proof. The Murkavim are those that Meviim Raya Al Nasu Mekuyim O Mishulav. The Murkav is the one that brings a proof, like I say. Since this is true, therefore this is true. Okay? So many of the statements we have in the Mishnah do not bring their proofs. They're simple statements. And the Gemara is when the Gemara does this analysis, it links the statements of the Mishnah to the proofs in the Chumash at Tarshabaka. Okay, but anyway, he breaks down all statements into two forms: statements that have proofs and statements that don't have proofs. If they don't have proof, it's called a simple statement. If they do have proof, it's called Murkav. It's made up of two parts. Just give me 1 second. I just want to close that window in the back, make sure that the children playing, which is quite nice in Yerushalayim, is not going to disturb anyone here. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, what he's going to do is show us now the two activities. Binyan, that I put in red, and the second activity is havchana. Okay? Binyan means to create. He used the word hamsa'ah. And the havchana means you're going to start with a statement and you're going to break it down and analyze it into its parts. So, the binyan of the Peshutim, we want to now create a simple statement without a proof, but we want to create a statement. So how do you do it, he says? He says, L'havchin b'nosei echad ha'havchanot. You, and by the way, he's going to explain all this, but first look at he always tells us the general rule, and then he gives us the examples. What you first do is discern one of the 21 terms in the subject that you're going to study. V'kayembo kafize nasu echad o sholel oso mimeno. You pick one of the havchanot, the 21, and you say, according to this havchana, this quality will or will not be found in the subject. Derech mashal. Here you see, he does a Tosefes biur. For instance, the world. Ba ha'olam. No olam, which is a no-say, right? You take the world. Let's talk about the world. So now you apply one of the 21 havchanot. So let's apply, he says, yibochen hasiba apoelis. You discern the siba poelis. What is the cause that is the active cause of the whole world? Well, he says, it's the Borei Yisbarach. It's Kodesh Baruch Hu. So once you've taken the world, you've said, okay, here's my term called Siba Poelis, who is the active cause of the world, and then I come up with, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is the active cause of the world. Now, once I've done that, now I can make a statement. What's the statement? Ha'olam boro ha'borei yisbarach. The world was created by Hashem. Okay? No proof, just a subject called the world, a application of one of the havchanot, this way, the siba poelis, what was the active cause, meaning who created the world. We thought about it and we said, it's a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and then we can build a statement. Ha'olam baro habore yisbrach. The world, which is our subject, we're going to affirm was created by Hashem Yisbrach. So that's how to create a statement. If you want to think methodically, you can take any subject, apply one of the 21 havchanot, and then the solution to that havchana will be the basis of your statement. How do we create?
Apply any one of the 21. We'd have to try that. See how.
Yes. By the way, he's going to go not through the Olam, but he's going to go in this chapter through all 21. He's going to take subjects and apply each one of them. Okay? So we could just do it with the world, but he's doing the work for us, Baruch Hashem. An essential part of it, without this part of the Sefer, it's very, very hard, to understand what the Ramchal is doing. You have to work very, very hard. Here he's clearly demonstrating his method of discovering new ideas. Okay? He gave us the 21 terms. You take any subject, you apply it, then there's Siyad Dishma. You have to come up with the right answer. Then later on we'll do the proofs. But right now we just want to make simple statements. Now you want to create a murkav. What do you say a murkav? A murkav is a statement with a raya. Okay? So he says this is what you have to do. Hevi raya al kiyim nasu benosei oshli l'sal mimenu b'kol hekesh. So now he says, a raya, he says, is brought because this statement should be the result of a syllogism. And again, remember what he told us in Derek Tfunos, that you can have many, as you dig into the source and want to prove something, you may have to go through many hekeshim, because each of the two premises that produced your result in turn must be proven themselves. So that may be done alpi premises, and other premises relate to those conclusions, or you're finally, what he says is you finally, in Tfunos he spells out, you finally have to get back down to one of the axiomatic principles. Okay, like 2 is greater than 4, okay? Or it could be a Kabbalah. It's true because this is what the Torah says. Well, this is what one of our great Tanaim says. For us, that's considered a proof. Okay, but the point here is, now, that may take you a few levels to get to your result. But let's go again, always from the simple to the complex. Binyan hamurkav hu. Hevi raya al kiyim nasu benosei. You want to bring a raya that this predicate really is in the subject or is not in the subject. Oshli l'sal mimenu. How do you do that? You have to do it through a complete syllogism. 2 premises whose result results in what you want to prove. So here's a statement. It's not the same one, but it's a new one. Anava hi tova. Humility is good. So first we analyze the statement. What does that do? It's mekayim anava shi tova. It takes tova, which is a predicate. It says it does exist in the subject of anava. So now you want to bring a proof to that fact. Okay, Navi Raya. Mipnei shehid toladas haseichel. The Raya is that it is a product of the seichel. Okay, just some of those when okay, whatever. I have to fix up that spelling thing sometime. All right.
He's saying that that the fact that it's a product of the seichel is a proof that it's good, because anything that's a product of the seichel is good.
Well, you hit the jackpot.
Oh, that's what he was going to say. Okay, very good.
Very good. You're a logical person. Okay, and many people are. But
I should get a little bit logical.
He's been banging away at us, you know. Get logical, get logical. Okay. Now, this really included in this result, this consequent, this result, is a hekeshalom. What is it? Kol ma shehi toledes haseichel hu tov. Anava toledes haseichel. Imkain, he didn't say the word anava hu tova. Okay? So we had two premises. Kol ma she toledes haseichel hu tov. And then that was a major premise. And then we said anava is a tolada of seichel. And in Cain, he told that. Now the question is, how do we prove those things? I didn't. That we again touched on in Der Tfunos. Now, why are those premises true? It's true that we got our result, but how do we prove that those premises are true? Okay, so he said about it. There's certain premises, and you'll probably hold it true here, that are muskal rishons. Muskal rishons means that they're, it's like the sky's blue, 2 and 2 is 4. Okay? You can't...
you can't argue with it.
Okay? You can't argue with it because it's basic. I mean, that's how man was created. What are you going to say? Okay, so that was binyan. Those are the two parts of binyan. We're either going to build simple statements through the application of the 21 havchanot, or we're going to build complex statements, which means we're going to add a proof, and that proof has to be because the statement that we desire is the result of two true premises. That's what he says. That's binyan. Now what about analysis? Analysis we're going to do reverse engineering and do just the opposite position. We're going to do a nituach, an analysis of things being said. So again, we have the peshutim and the murkavim. He says the havchanat hamamrim hapeshutim hu. How do you do analysis of a simple statement? Well, the first thing you do is havchin chelkehem. The first thing you do when you have a statement, it could be written in a rhetorical way. You say, Shmuel's chacham. And if you do that with a tmiya, then it turns out you're really saying Shmuel is not a chacham. So you always have to strip away rhetoric and get back to what is the subject, what is the predicate, what is the kesher. Okay? So when you're doing your analysis, the first thing you have to do is carefully discern what is being said and what is being said about it. That's step one. Havchin chelkem d'hainosein nasu, havchanat hamamrim hapeshutim. Okay, so now he's going to show us, this is like derech mashal. Ha'olam boro yisparach. Oh, wow, didn't we just have that statement? Yeah. Someone says the statement, the world was created by Hashem. So now we're going to do reverse engineering. Hu havchanat chalakav. The first thing you do is you have to define what is the nosei and what is the nasu. So he says the nosei is the world, and the nasu is the fact that the Kodesh Baruch Hu created it. Okay, very nice. That's havchanat of a maimer. Now let's do the second part. Havchanat of a maimer hamur. Now we have a statement in front of us that's not only a statement, but it also is a proof. So what do we have to do to clearly identify the statement and its proof? So he says the following. Havchanat hamaimerim hamurkavim hu havchin chelkehem. Dahainu chiyuv o shlili v'raya alav. What you have to do when you're analyzing a person who presents a statement and a proof is first of all clearly understand what is the subject, what is the predicate, and what is being affirmed or denied. And now the most important thing is to discern what is the proof to the statement. And he says, Ubaraya yichlo hekesholem. And he says the proofs are always made with a complete hekesh. Okay? Because you don't have to bring a proof to a statement that is muskal rishon. So by definition, a proof that you're bringing means that it has to be built on some external information, which is going to be a link or a hekesh to another source. Okay, so that's called Havchanas Hamamrim Hamurkavim, to define the statement and its source. So here's an example.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting that in the Pshutim he says just identify the Nosei and the Nasu. In the Murkavim, he sort of leaves out the Nosei and Nasu. He just talks about Chiv and Shlila and the Raya. Is that really the same, the Chiv and Shlila and the Nosei and the Nasu? Because when you talk about the Nosei and the Nasu, you're going to talk about the Nosei and what this Nasu is, whether it's Chiv or Shlila.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Why didn't he say the Nosei, the Nasu, the Chiv, and the Shlila? That's a good point. I have to think about that.
It seems that it's the same. Just
L'chora, you should have said it, but okay, I don't know. Okay, that's part of the mamar, the chiv and shlila and the raya. But maybe what he wants to talk about is the conclusion. And the chiddush of the conclusion is that something is or is not there. And that's why we need a proof. But I just threw that out. I mean, I'm not bad. That's I would like to think about what you said more deeply. But okay, but definitely when we're doing reverse engineering, we always have to know what the conclusion is. And then we have to know whether the conclusion is affirming or denying something of something. Of course, we have to know what it is. That's almost Peshita maybe. That's why he left it out. I don't know. But then more important is if you're saying that something has or doesn't have something, then you have to prove it. So for that, he needs a hekesh. Okay, so he says the raya is always with a hekesh sholem. So now he's going to give us some examples. Let's do an analysis on the Mamar HaMurkav, which said, Onava hi tova mipnei shehi toladas haseichel. Okay, we want to analyze that. That's a statement and a proof. Hu havchin kelakam, dahainu kiyam shehu hiyos onava tova. That's interesting. You see, he says it. I think you hit on a very important point here. Because here he stresses the point that we're trying to prove is that Anava is good. Okay? Of course we have to know we're talking about Anava and we have to say it's good, but the essential thing that we're trying to prove, Anava is just a subject. We're not saying, there's no proof to Anava, it's just a subject. It's like saying a cow. Okay, so the important thing here is we're saying something about it. The minute you say something about something, then you need a proof that that thing actually is there or isn't there. Okay, so that's really the essential point is the predication. You need a proof to that subject has that predication. Okay, so he says like this. Hu havchin chelakav dahainu kiyum shehu hiyos anavatova. Yes, the whole import of the statement was that the subject anava has the quality of being good. So now we have to discern, well, what's the raya to that statement? So he says the raya is mipnei shehi toladas haseichel. Okay, and that's what the statement says. Anava hi tova mipnei shehi toladas haseichel. The mipnei part, or the mishum part, is the raya to the statement. Shenikla b'zeh hekesh shalem, the hainu, and then what you have to do is spell out clearly the hekesh shalem. Kol toladas hatol the toiva, anava hu toladas haseichel, and therefore anava hu tova. Okay? He just says v'chulu. I was wondering whether I should just spell everything out too. I hope I just do it in a different color or something like that. I don't like to add words to him, but I understand that when you're reading the book quickly, so you understand how to put things together. But I like to spell things out 100% anyway. Okay, so that is his little introduction. Okay, maybe what we'll do is he's now going to go through the whole kit and caboodle here. He's going to start with all the 21. It's going to start with the Siva Plus, not all the subsections, but all the major sections. You know, I mean, there's a lot of. Remember, he has all these halakim inside each part, but he's going to go through the 21 right here. Okay, so maybe we'll stop here, And let's maybe just do a little review of what he said. And I don't know why my cursor is blinking, but it is. Okay, so the important thing to realize here is that there's two parts. There's creating statements and proofs, and there's analyzing statements and proofs. Okay, those are two activities that we're doing all the time. We're either trying to create new information by defining some aspect of a subject, which he's defined as 21, or we're trying to bring a proof to a statement that the statement is true, or it could be proof the statement is false, but normally we want to say it's true. And so that's the first part, which is creating. And the second part we're going to do is analyzation, which is what is being said and what is the proof for what's being said. Those are the two aspects. So Be'ezrat Hashem, I think it's a good place to stop. We'll stop here, and then next week we'll be getting to 21. Okay? Fantastic.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, huh? No, see, it's amazing that he created such a system. It's quite amazing. It really is quite amazing. And the system, he's true to the system, not only creating the Sefer, but also in creating his other Sfarim. And with the system, and this is really where I got, this whole idea of visual logic. When you start breaking things down carefully and spelling everything out down to its roots, then you get a clear idea of what's going on. And that's really what Iyun is about, as opposed to Bekias. Bekias is just a surface level introduction to certain concepts. But the real nitty-gritty, which is the proofs of each side and the strength of the proofs of each side and the difficulties that exist in each side, that whole analysis process, that comes only with Iyun and with deep evaluation. But it's all, the Chiddush here is that, according to the Ramchal, everyone's following the same process, just not aware of it consciously. But everyone's doing it. This is what they're doing when they're trying to communicate. Okay, so we'll stop here. Now we'll go on to our second Sefer.